All right. There are many things happening in the country at the moment, politically, of course, and folks are realigning, and others are spewing, and others are bombshelling, and etc., etc. And to help us have a conversation around these rising political temperatures and looking at whether certain groups are being targeted is Riziki Dunstan, who is a lawyer and the vice chairman of the National Reconstruction Alliance Party, and he's in the hot seat of the Situation Room this morning. Riziki, good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
Fine, thank you. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome to the hot seat of the Situation Room.
Thank you very much.
Some conversations we will have this morning bordering on hot as well. So I guess you're in the right place. As we do in the Situation Room, we would like to welcome you to today's conversation with today's proverb. CT goes around the African continent every week. He comes back from a different country with a basket full of proverbs. He's going to share that with you, and we'd like you to interpret that for us and tell us what you think about it. Is that all right?
That's okay.
Okay.
Our proverbs come from the Republic of Zimbabwe. God is good, but this proverb, I actually like it. I have said it before, not today, but in a previous time last year. So I'm repeating it again because I like it. God is good, but never dance with a lion.
Nice. The interpretation of that is that anytime you have to take care, apart from God doing his best to take care of you and being good to you, being omnipresent and omniscient, then you also have to do your best by not, dancing with a lion and taking care of yourself as a person. You have to give your best, do whatever you ought to do to protect yourself from the evil ones. As a believer, I will say that. Yes.
True. It's like saying, God's got me, and then I walk into the street
Actually,
where there's a bus coming.
The foundation of that is amongst the Mashonas, the lion is the greatest animal. The Shonaland, the people from Mashona, the lion is the greatest animal. Thus, anytime you have to meet a lion, then you have to do your best to protect yourself from the lion. And that is giving that African foundation, that is the basis of such a proverb. And
as you've done your homework, because he is right. When you talk about the communities in Zimbabwe, the Shona form the largest. They are the bigger population. The Dembele are a smaller group, yes. The history between these two communities is not pleasant. And it has been there for the longest time, but that is absolutely true.
Thank you.
Fantastic. 1,000,000 points. Do with them as you wish.
Thank you very much.
Riziki, so many things happening in the country at the moment, and just trying to peel back and take a step back and say, okay, where then do we find the sweet spot in terms of what would essentially be done for Kenyans? But let's take a look. There are rising political temperatures. I mean, normally you would see something like this closer to an election, but we're far off from the election in terms of days and months. Still 2 years to go. 2 years and a few months to go. But you would think that an election was going to take place tomorrow. Whether we have tours of regions and that those haven't come to an end, or whether we're going into the spot where people are doing tell-alls about all the rot that they see when they were on the in, and now that they're on the out, now that we suddenly hear all of these things. And then we even see that folks who've been aligned to one political, individual, then have their things like their security having been revoked, and then having to go make, statements at the DCI, and it goes on and on and on. It's a cauldron. It's boiling. Where are we at the moment from your point of view?
I think the first point of view is that the president or the current regime underestimated the stature and the acumen of one former deputy president in terms of his political prowess and his ability, the gift of the gab, to be able to really counter some of the accusations leveled against him. Two, the other aspect that probably we can really point our eyes to is the aspect that anytime you are mid-term of an electoral cycle, that is 3 years or 2.5 years past the voting date, then the voters are at liberty to really gauge your prowess in terms of service delivery, in terms of delivery of promises, and that is where William Ruto finds himself at. Therefore, it will be fool's paradise to really expect that the masses will not be able to judge you. Therefore, at this moment in time, we are looking at a situation whereby the rising political temperatures are embedded on two things. The underestimation of the political acumen of one Rigathi Gachagua and the miscalculations, both locally and internationally, in terms of the diplomatic gaffes that the president has made, in terms of the political miscalculations the president has made, in terms of, the promises that have not been met. Therefore, all this boils to one thing, that anytime you are not able to deliver on a particular things, on a particular promises, then the temperatures really rise. The temperatures rise because the people are not able to see the results. That being the backdrop of our discourse this morning, you look at the formation and the caliber of the political stature of William Ruto. Prior to 2022, he engaged in active politics, or he campaigned all through the second term of President Uhuru Kenyatta. And I see that being the case because he has not been able to transform into a president or the stage of a president, and he is actively engaged in day-to-day politics. So I think he needs to have a moment of reflection and probably come back to the office, sit down as a president, and let the political machinations take care of themselves. But as it is right now, with development tours, with the spews and the backlashes with the opponents, it makes him rather an ineffective president. Therefore, the best we can do at the moment is the president to leave out politics, sit out and really serve from the peripheral view, and then he'll be able to see the mistakes. A number of things are done, and the conversations or the replies on top of vehicles are basically not worth it for a president, are not presidential in nature. Therefore, it will be time, and it's appropriate time probably, for him to be able to come back to the office, serve from the office, and not engage in public spat, because the caliber and probably the underestimation, the caliber of the former deputy president, anytime he engages in a spat with him, he gets into a pig's fight. And in this case, you'll see anytime they're exchanging, then it is the president that loses. At this moment, he's not losing only to the political base, but is putting the country's diplomatic, standing at disarray.
How so?
Because
how is he doing that?
The accusations about Sudan and the involvement of our president and all these allegations not really augur well at our diplomatic space. You get it really disadvantages in the region.
The allegations, one could argue that they're mere allegations.
Exactly,
Why would
coming
the
from a
diplomatic
person
space from
coming from a person who was his deputy, then. And also the deputy is inviting the international community to come and really give attention to that. It really gives or leaves more to say. It is wise and it is most strategic that probably don't engage him, don't engage in spats with him, leave him alone for that.
Because he could open his mouth and say what could be true?
Exactly, because you have to protect our diplomatic standing as a country, because at times it is not about the individual fights that are really costing us. But you see, their fights, their political fights and exchanges are now costing the entire nation diplomatically. We are seeing our standing today with the country, the nation of Serbia is not so good. We are seeing because of the same kind of things. So I will really urge the president and the people around him to really avoid a spat with him, because it is time that probably we had to think that politics is not about individuals.
How do we see the deterioration of this so fast? He said these things yesterday. Do we see that in less than 12 hours, the deterioration of diplomatic relations between Kenya and Serbia?
No. Actually,
or would we see the deterioration of diplomatic relations between Kenya and Sudan, or Kenya and South Sudan as a result, or Kenya and the Democratic Republic of Congo? Do we see that as a result of what Rigathi Gachagua said last night? Or do we see that in the future there could be a frosty relation?
At the moment, you're already in a situation where we have a forced relationship with Serbia, we have a forced relationship with Sudan, we have a forced relationship with DRC Congo, we have a forced relationship with most of our neighbors because probably of the approach the president has given to a number of issues. And coming from actually the Russian roulette we are playing here with is that now we have a former deputy president who is coming out and now giving it it out bear that, by the way, our president is wrong. You see, this lends credence to it. And probably going forward, it is time to really reevaluate where we stand as a country, where we reevaluate our diplomatic standing, and probably our future engagements. Because as it is, then RSF, Sudan and RSF, they are going to, put accusations. Remember, already you have a warrant of arrest against the RFF commanders. Mm-hmm. So you can imagine, at this moment in time, we already have our president probably as an interested party in the Sudan wars. I think it is the least we can go as a country, because we are known as the haven of peace, the citadel of peace within the region. Now we are seen as the catalyst of war within the region. We are seen as the enablers of disruptions within our region, which I think is the worst we can do as a country. And probably all along, we look at the times of Kenyatta, Moi, Kibaki, Uhuru, all along, we've been seen as a country that really, the center of peace, the haven of stability within the region. But now, coming from a deputy president, we're being accused of heinous acts that are unimaginable for a country like Kenya, for that matter.
I mean, as the political temperatures continue to rise in the country, I mean, it's coming from a point where we have both sides who are aggrieved, who are just pissed off at each other pretty much. And if you look at the former deputy president speaking yesterday, he was speaking from a point of responding to what had been said against him by the president. But even while we are at it, you find that recently, when the former deputy president was going to a meeting, his meeting was interfered with, and that is also another meeting that happened a while back as well. You look at security forces not doing anything about that. And there is a feeling as though it is intentional that those who oppose the government will find the shorthand of the stick, yet they equally are supposed to be taken care by the government. Is that the case? Is there a feeling that when you oppose the government, you get the shorthand of the stick?
I think that what we experienced, probably the recent attacks against the former deputy president and his lieutenants, it is uncalled for, unimaginable that during this century and during this time and era, that we still have those barbaric acts of attacking opponents. Politics is about divergence of opinion, divergence of ideas, and whichever side of the divide you belong, you ought not to be attacked. The major aspect that we are really, really against is the aspect of the Inspector General of Police not taking responsibility. We've not seen arrests being done both in Limuru. We've not seen arrests being done now in Kasarani. We've not seen arrests done in Naivasha. Looking at it, it sends a very wrong picture to our country. That are we a country governed by institutions? Are our institutions mostly the security operators or operational, or are they dead for that matter? And those responsible. We've seen even the Inspector General of Police attend rallies. It is unimaginable that this age and era, coming from a time when the CDF was addressing a public, a lecture, and in that lecture giving political warnings. We've never been here as a country. All along from the times of Kenyatta, all the CDFs that ever sat or ever were in power, there was no time that a CDF addressed any kind of meeting and gave extremely, polarized political statements. Going forward,
are you suggesting that what the CDF did was something negative?
Whatever CDF did, looking at Article 10 of the Constitution, it really encourages public participation and all that, and accountability of the various institutions that are in power, and security apparatus being one of those institutions. Reading Article 232 of the Constitution, public officers ought to act with highest form of professional ethics in whatever position they hold. And that is not the case. His participation and his address to such kind of fora is in order, but the content or the ideas that he exposed within that fora is the issue. When you now go and take sides politically or appear to be taking sides.
What did he do or say that indicated he took sides?
When you talk about a particular statement against a particular person, that, for example, you come out clearly and say that Ruto must go, for example, in a political discourse, that it is a statement that can land you into bad.
So, according to you, that is what he said. That he was saying that if somebody says Ruto must go, it will land them into trouble.
Exactly, which is
that is not what he said. Mm-hmm. No, it's what's popular being touted as what he said, there have been many articles written about this very lecture, which was targeted as talking about the changing landscape of Kenyan intelligence and security. So the CDF was not the only person at that lecture. The lecture was given by the Director General of NIS. We had the AG, we had the President of the Law Society also giving. Yes. And the truth of the matter is this. Everything that has been said has completely removed what was said contextually, including what you've just said.
Actually, the CDF was responding.
No, he was giving an example of what people say.
Yes.
And he was talking about the rights that people have. And he was talking about their role as the military and what they do in terms of ensuring stability in the country and what the constitution requires of them. And he said that those who are saying Ruto must go, indeed, if that's what they feel, they must do so constitutionally. That's what he said. He did not say you shouldn't say. No, he did not. He said there is a constitution. What they do is constitutional. And everyone who is a citizen must also abide by
contextualizing the statement that if you want to say Ruto must go, you have to do it constitutionally, right?
No. If you want, not if you want to say, no. If you want Ruto to go, that's what he said. You must do so constitutionally. Not what you say. You can say it. He said you can say it actually. But if you want him to go, there's a constitution, follow it. That is what he said.
Okay, so then are we looking at a situation where we're in a place where politically there can be something that would be done to douse these fires? And one would argue that, okay, fine, let everybody go for it. Do what you need to do to subdue the other side. Because essentially all of this is hurtling towards an election. That's the end goal.
I think if we let everything go that way, then we'll be heading to a parallel republic, which I think we are not. So the best we can do is have functional institutions, have the IG work, have the DPP work, have all other sectors of government and institutions work independently. And I think with that, with the levels of accusations that have been leveled, for example, by the deputy president and his proteges, probably it's time that probably the government gives its position because of our standing in the Committee of Nations. That being the case, for us to salvage ourselves from that, also the deputy president, the former deputy president, and the president, it's time that probably they also rethink of politics beyond their self-interest, because politics is not about just two individuals or two communities or two nations coming or fighting for either opportunities or resources, but politics is also about the community or the country called Kenya. It is time that probably the president rethinks and really looks at Kenya and really approaches politics not necessarily as a game, but also as a game of interest, but also as a wholesome enterprise for the good of the people who are called Kenyans. That being the case, it is time that probably the president relooks and really rethinks of day-to-day politics, but rather have a different engagement.
Riziki, as we talk about politics in the country right now, I would talk about the government and how it's approaching, but the president how he's approaching politics. But we also realize that if you are an outsider, someone who's opposed the former deputy president, and you're going to his home turf where he's strong, you will equally face opposition. So it is a question of the political class and how they view politics in the country, because either side would be targeted. It just depends from what side it is you're looking at it from. So in terms of both sides playing politics right and making sure that it is by the law, are we looking at a situation where our political class will arise above the politics of deception, of violence, and speak to the heart of the people and pretty much just serve?
I think what we need is what we call a political hygiene. A political hygiene in the sense that the political players, I'm not necessarily looking at those in government and outside government, but all of us are political animals by our very nature. All of us have a responsibility, first of all, to hold those in government to account, so that within their 5 or 7 or 5 years in power or their stay in power, we get value for their positions in government. Therefore, the aspect of those in government and those outside government should not be there, because it is our government for all of us, and all of us have a stake and responsibility. Looking forward, how best can we be able to cure this and have the ideal political hygiene? The best we can do is those in positions should keep to the rules of the game. The first rule of the game is to deliver to the masses. The second rule of the game is to hold their positions and respect the rule of law. Because anytime we just respect the rule of law as a country,
but to a politician, the rule of the game is to outsmart.
And you're assuming that those people, these politicians who are getting into this game are doing it for anything outside of personal interest. You assume that their intent is actually to make the country better.
The first thing is the politicians are a reflection of who we are as a country and our common desires as a people. If our common desires are people to see a progressive Kenya beyond today, therefore the first desire is to have the right people in office. That is the first desire. And those elected in office should do exactly that. Assuming they don't do exactly that, then we are lost as a country. Because where we sit right now, we have some of our leaders on our laws in breach. And which is
help me understand this.
Yes.
You see, people whom we invite come here and they say the same thing that you are saying.
Yes.
So it means it's something that people have noticed and they've seen there's a gap.
Yes.
Having the sort of leaders who will actually propagate the interests of those who have elected them. How do you identify such people?
It is easy to identify such people who have either good interest or bad interest.
How?
Through the election process, which is which at this moment is
which election process? The Kenyan electoral process.
That people go to vote.
Which this as we speak right now, our election process is polarized, and is hijacked is commercialized in a way. So assuming we had a right election process,
no,
then we will
our electoral process is fine.
Not really, because we don't really elect people who hold our best interests. We elect people who come in because of their resources, because of their tribal hegemony,
Riziki,
because of
we elect them.
Yes,
we have the choice. We can decide who to elect. And these are the people we elect. The earlier statement you made seems to reinforce this. The leaders we elect are a reflection of us.
Our people.
Yes, that seems to be the case. So, is this process of going to vote? It's fine. There's, as far as I'm concerned, there's no problem with it. Our problems always arise after we have voted, and then we start tallying the results. And it's not the results, the presidential results. Other results just seem to sail smoothly without any hitch. The presidential results is where we have
a problem.
We always have a hiccup.
Riziki Dunstan is a lawyer and the vice chairperson of the National Reconstruction Alliance Party. And even as we look at what's going on, I mean, established a number of things, isn't it? That folks will make alliances, not because they suddenly care that, okay, we need to get this education thing sorted out, or we need to make sure that the roads are happening, and I am the person who's going to push for that if I'm in the National Assembly. No. I don't see a situation whereby people are making these alliances or realigning themselves or streamlining things to do that. It's for political gain. It's for personal expediency. It's not because somebody's had a Damascus moment and said, okay, you know what, let me realign so that I can really come and give a push and make things better for the people of Kenya. I don't see that yet.
Yeah, and that won't happen either, because whatever it is that you've just said has only just increased with the time. And the people who are elected get bolder in their misdeeds. Previously, we understood that a bribe comprised of 10% of whatever it is that you're dealing with. Over time, that has increased. We are informed that people actually want half of what it is that you have indicated as in your invoice. Some even go as far as 70%, depending on the time and space. And it is everywhere. In fact, it is said that the national government is milder and easier to deal with. It's the county governments that are hell on earth. Now, these are people who've been elected. And that is how they behave. And when asked, they say, people keep demanding money. But this is not a chicken and egg situation.
Yeah.
Who started this business of giving people money? Is it the people who demanded the money first, or are they induced into the process of expecting and receiving money?
Okello?
Yes.
First, looking at how our voting and our election patterns are done, we are basically, in a merry-go-round of electing either thieves or corrupt individuals or people who have no principles, no standing on anything. But this is basically also embedded on the fact that we vote based on tribal hegemony. You bring one tribe, we bring one region, put together, having that, maybe bearing the fact that we probably have numbers, then you have the advantage of, having it all. The second thing is our electoral system, is a system that favors the winner. The winner takes all system. In this sense, those ones who are left out of the system feel left out, and they're left out in the sharing of natural resources. This also with the backdrop of the sessional papers that really spearheaded or really put to place our current political systems and our economical systems. Other regions feel left out, and this, in one way or another, those elected in office are really trying so hard to either catch up in terms of resource mobilization, in terms of acquisition of resources, in terms of maybe stealing, I could call it. So the major cause of this kind of system of this kind of product is the desire for capitalism, the desire to acquire resources, the desire to win by all means. Assuming we came up with a system that does not really favor the winner takes it all, then probably will be a cure to this. Two, as a people, probably it's also time to do a moment of soul searching, because the leaders we elect in office are a reflection of who we are as a people. Therefore, if we as a people elect the corrupt people who reflect us, then we are to blame. Going forward, probably it is time that we sanitize our political process, and we as the voters forget about the commercialization of our politics, the people who come in with the stolen money, or the people who come in with a clear-cut agenda to steal so that they can recover and protect their ill-gotten wealth. It is us as a people who have the moral aptitude to be able to really judge and see that this person means well for us as a people, this person has the best agendas for us, and the best we could do as a country is actualize the regulations around election financing.
How do you know if somebody is the right fit? How do you look at somebody and say, okay, yeah, this person...
The level of expenditure that this person puts into the campaign process is a reflection of his intention. For example, you cannot want to be a member of parliament and spend 500 million shillings. It means that, for example, that you intend to recover it in normal case scenario, to recover this money either way. So once elected, and that's why probably it's a time that we really need to call for campaign financing with an objective to really curb those who have maybe ulterior intentions and those who really go into office. Let our institutions function. For example, if we look at the CDF and the counties, are havens of corrupt individuals, an individual who had nothing, who has no idea of even producing anything, even a soap. Today we will see him walking around the village with a big house and a big car. You ask him how he managed to get this. He has no idea. Some of them have even gotten into problems because of having a lot of money that they cannot even account for it. So our systems, they call upon the Auditor General, all the EACC and all the institutions. If they work collaboratively, then we'll have right people in office.
All these people are Kenyans. All these people you're referring to. These fellows who are members of parliament, they were not born members of parliament.
Yes.
No. And the members of parliament we have now are not the members of parliament we had 10 years ago.
That's why I say it is up to us as a people to really sift out and get the best we can.
No. That we do. We vote people based on our understanding, our disappointments. and just the fatigue, you figure, they won't do anything anyway. So what do you
just have them there.
why don't we just get ours up front? Then he can go and do what he likes. We have a political system which is actually, it's like an investment basket.
Yes.
Somebody puts the amount you mentioned,
Yes.
and now looks for ways of recouping
it back.
So
So that's how corruption is
yes,
now
so
emboldened.
precisely. So the idea of the interest of the person, you see, the politician takes care of his interest, but you, the citizens, are the ones who give him that power. Do we understand the power that we have? If we can give you something, we can actually take it away.
Take it back.
Exactly.
But do we? Have we gotten to a point where we can understand that the only way they will behave, and I'm putting it simply because sometimes our elected leaders behave like children. The only way they will toe the line is if they know consequences await them, and the citizenry will kick you out. Because so long as they don't have that job, they can't perpetrate whatever it is they're perpetrating.
Actually, looking at Article 104 of the Constitution gives us now the power, the citizenry, the power of recall.
Do we understand it?
And I think it's time that probably the masses, at the time they're going to an election, they should also be told that, by the way, these people, these individuals you're electing in office need to be accountable to you.
Ricky, who's going to tell them?
It is us, the people.
How are we going to tell the people who are us that this is what they must do? How do you get people to understand that they have this power?
These kind of forums, CT, these are the forums that we all tell the masses that, by the way, when you elect an individual into office, he is your servant. And being your servant, you can't recall him, and the Constitution gives you the grace and the mandate to recall such individuals. So long as you have right institutions, we're in the process of having an IBC. Let the people be educated. Actually, in the recent past, you've seen individuals collecting signatures against some of the members of parliament. That being the case, it should be the case that if they're not performing, and it should be a pledge by all those sitting in office.
How do you use the message that you are referring to to get people out of the slumber that we are currently in? Because we seem to have accepted that our fate is to have leaders who will always take advantage of us.
And that is sealed.
Yes, there's nothing we can do.
I think there's a lot of political awakening.
Really? Where is it exactly?
It is actually at the moment we have about 4 or 5 MPs who, assuming we had a functional IBC, they will have probably been recalled. So that is a step in the right direction. 2, if we have an IBC, for example, and the masses are as enlightened, the things have changed with social media, with X and all that there is a different mode of political mobilization. It might not be a countrywide, but at least there's a starting point. There are individuals who are now awakened to the place.
Let's just have a discussion around how to recall an MP for status.
Yes.
Let's just go through the process, yeah? So here is an application. A voter from the MP's constituency submits a signed recall petition. There's a verification of signatures, and that has to be at least 30%. And then you have IEBC approval and notification, and then you have the by-election. But even as we talk about this, first of all, we need an IEBC that is functional.
That is functional.
And based off what we've seen so far, for some weird reason, IEBC is just IEBC. It's usually never there when you need it most. But as we talk about that and the awakening that we need and whatnot, you see the process that is involved. And Kenyans, as City has said, tumechoka, let's just go do this thing and go. And when we talk about the entire matter about political good manners and whatnot, it does not exist. It will take more for us to get there. Which begs the question. You say that the people that we vote in is a reflection of who we are. But we vote people in based of promises they've given us, and we give them the trust and belief that they will deliver. When they don't deliver, we have 5 years.
We don't have 5 years. I think Article 104 of the Constitution gives us that mandate that is not about 5 years. You can, if assuming they don't deliver, and assuming in an ideal political situation, where we have a functional IBC that is really independent and really out to deliver on its mandate, then the functionality of Article 104 of the Constitution will really enable good governance, because that is the desire. 2, the reading Article 10 of the Constitution, assuming all the people and I use the word assuming, all the people we elect in office were taken through to understand the force and the jurisprudence behind Article 10, then that is the place we'll have maybe true liberation of our country. Because when you're talking about accountability, transparency, public participation, all of it is embedded in Article 10. So if we have a leader, and if we have the people, the people because they participate in electing these leaders, and they have an understanding of what that leader ought to do on the basis on the IGs of Article 10, then we will have the right people in office. And those holding public offices, like for example IBC, will also have the understanding of Article 10, that by the way, you hold this public office in trust of the masses. You get? In trust of the people. Then we will have right people in office, and those who will not perform, by the way, will not even be there.
But
because
Riziki, this idea of the right leaders, unfortunately, I find it to be unpalatable. Because many of these people who are voted in, if you look at their track record before they were voted in, they are very okay people. That's why they got voted in.
Yes.
Looking at them,
You would say that this is an okay
you would
person.
say this guy will actually do right by the people.
Yeah.
So there was actually nothing wrong with them until they breathe that air that they breathe in Parliament, which is laced with God knows what. Okay?
I think the first mistake we make as a people, for me, I think
Yes.
this is my personal opinion, is one, anytime you see an individual out to spend a fortune, however good he may be, to be in a particular office, that should be a red flag.
Let me paint a picture.
Yes.
We all live in this country, right?
Yes.
And as my dad usually says, if you look at your hands, they're all not equal, right?
Yeah.
So here's a situation where I'm a Kenyan, I'm a billionaire, and I want to get into politics, rightfully. So I have the money to spend. How would you then stop me from
I think
getting into politics?
that's why we have something called campaign financing bill, laws and all that. This campaign
We
financing,
had it.
We
but
had
who,
it.
Who
Who
muddied
made sure
those
that it was
waters?
essentially
that it was
lifeless?
essentially dead.
yeah, the politicians are
Precisely.
those in
Precisely.
office. So the ideal situation is that, assuming we have campaign financing, then it will cap off those who are coming to politics with an intention to make a fortune and with an intention to not to serve the masses.
Let me disabuse that view of yours. Politicians take their cue from the president. That's what they do in this country, especially in this government.
Yes.
All right?
Yes.
And that is why our courts are full of cases where individuals, you say they need to understand, they do understand. And because they understand, that is why people go to court. They do understand and they know the only recourse we have is the court. What we do not understand is how to hold leaders accountable. We don't. Now, if we could, they would take the cue from us, not the president. They would understand that these people who elected me will recall me the moment they're unhappy. They would know.
I think let's take, for example, the recent finance bill or the former finance bill and the voting around deputy president. There are a number of MPs who have not been able to go back to be back to their constituents or to be actively, participate in the activities in their constituency. Reason being, they did not heed to the hue and cry of their people. Will this also be seen as a basis of some level of accountability of the masses and a basis of public participation in decision making by those in office? Assuming that is the case, the buck really falls not, I think, on the president, because
Really?
for me, the buck falls on us as voters.
But Riziki,
Because the
reason
voters.
why we're having this conversation is so that we can try and look at this thing honestly.
Yeah.
The politicians take their cue from the president.
Which is not the ideal, which is not the best situation.
Of course, it is not. It's just the reality.
Yes.
How do you counter the influence? You see, I don't blame a politician for looking after their own interest. That's what they do the world over. The check and balance, and that's what a democracy is supposed to provide, that the citizenry hold them in check. That is what happens. When they know that they will not get away with the things they do, then they toe the line. If not, they will actually run wild.
And I think as well, City, the need of just having a proper political goodwill, because we also have institutions that are in place in making sure that all these checks and balances are into place. Like, for example, when you get into Parliament, the Parliament is there to oversee checks and balances are from the executive. We have the EACCs, the police department, the DCI, all these investigative agencies, and just making sure that right is done by the people. But that as well, City, still goes back to the person who's leading the government and the goodwill in making sure that these institutions work as expected. Because talk about budgetary, you go to judiciary, it's always cut. You know what I mean?
Looking at it, why I still hold the perception or the view that we have a stake. The number of public interest litigations that have gone into, for example, into court, and the courts have made their pronouncement towards it, really, for me, gives me hope that, by the way, as a people who are not necessarily in office, who are not necessarily maybe holding various positions, we have seen individuals, we have seen Omtatas before even he went into Senate, holding government to account. We shouldn't sit back and say that the president has everything. We also have some power and some, the legislative leg room through which we can use the judiciary, we can use our various petitions, some of which has worked because our judiciary has maybe stopped a number of issues that are probably not legally right. So going forward, what we need is just public awareness that, by the way, as masses, we also have a stake in our government. We also have a role in our, in our administration. If we don't do it by the vote, by the way, we have a leeway under Article 22 of the Constitution to do it by the courts or by the judiciary. And the judiciary, on a number of issues, has been able to really pronounce itself that this is not right. Probably the government has managed to have its way or maybe change a number of things through the machinations and all that. But we shouldn't sit back and say that, by the way, we are defeated. We're not defeated. We have, the Constitution, we have our judiciary, we have numbers of institutions, we have seen a number of legislations being thrown out by our courts, which I think is pro-people.
Yeah.
And
we are making progress.
Yes.
There is no question about it. But even as I lambast the politicians and members of parliament, there are very many members of parliament who actually do what they were elected to do. And they do it very well. They are known. Unfortunately, when it comes to the crucial things that affect the country, we have a problem.
Indeed. And even as we do look at this, so the temperatures are rising, and we can theorize things, but also when we look at the practicality of what's happening currently, is that we do see temperatures rising. We do see that things can get ugly. I mean, just as of yesterday, we see accusations flying, allegations flying around. And we also know that folks latch on to a lot of these things and make decisions based on that. Here we are saying that Kenyans can make decisions politically because, they can take the ideal, but things happen in the public arena upon which we latch our beliefs. Certain individuals, are we seeing that the target of such individuals, of such communities, then is just part of the game? Should we take these seriously?
I think the target of any politician is, first of all, to win an election, because that is the acquisition of power is what is ideal for a politician. So he will do anything, bring confusion, bring allegations here and there, some of them true, others false, but the ultimate objective of a politician is acquisition of power. But going forward, there is a level of awakening that, by the way, right now, if you accuse a person of a particular issue, the individuals are now able to question and are alive to maybe your political statements, your history as an individual. Unlike before, some other time before, we could take it anything that we are told. But right now, if you told somebody that you'll do this to a particular community, then they're able to question. You also told us this and this. So the history of politicians is now coming to is now at stake, because people are able to judge you not based just on today, but also based on your previous statements, previous years, previous situation. And this is the kind of awakening that is ideal for our country right now. Going forward, as we go to 2027, the first thing we ought to think about is the current players in the political scene. Do they mean well for us as a country?
Do they?
Is this something we need to think about, really?
Do they?
That is a question maybe we could think about.
No.
Do they mean well?
No.
And you have to look at not
Riziki,
those ones in office.
look at the state of the economy.
Yeah.
What does it tell you?
Look at certain individuals. For example, we would look at the Githunguri MP yesterday went and made a statement before the DCI talking about the fact that a security had been removed. And this is political, clearly political. And we see things like that. And then we say, okay, the person who may or may not have given that order, clearly because of the alliances that she may or may have not made with a certain individual.
Yes.
And then we are supposed to make a decision based on individuals for whom that is happening to, or those who call the shots around such things.
We
see it happening.
We've
see it
seen
happening all the
to
time.
other politicians,
I think,
MPs before.
In the political space, then we ought to ask ourselves, who are the alternatives? Are we only with a batch of hyenas, or do we have goats amongst the hyenas?
Let me suggest something for you. The citizenry
Yes.
probably need to not wait for someone to declare themselves. Let them go to the individuals that
Exactly,
can
yes.
do the job, because when you go to the person and tell them, we'd like you to do this,
He becomes your servant.
he will understand. He did not appoint himself.
Yes.
You are the one who appointed him.
Totally. That's why I'm saying, look at the political scenario, the landscape, right? But from this landscape, look at these alternatives. Who are these people whom we can really vouch for?
There are very
and
many.
really, come out and say so and so. You can do well. Why can't you seek office? And we shall back you up. And educate the masses on the need of having right leaders in office. And these are the kind of forums that we ought really to think about, that how best can we be able to tell people that, by the way, you can elect a leader who will serve the interest of the country.
Riziki,
And
people know what is good for them. The idea that they don't is, it's normal. They know. They even know what they know. All these things we talk about as though they don't know. They actually know.
They just let down?
No.
Yeah.
Survival mode dictates.
I am not convinced that all of us as Kenyans know. One time I went to a place called Kapenguria, and I was with a political figure. And the people of Kapenguria, or that small hamlet, they had no idea of the political figure, who he was, and he was a national figure. There are areas in this country that
we're talking about them knowing the individuals.
there are areas in this country, because of the level of information, the level of exposure, they even don't understand that we have a system of government.
So from what I hear you saying at the end of the day is that everybody needs to be informed about essentially what's going on in order
if we
to make
assume
the right
that
decisions.
we all know, then we will be on a wrong premise. Because there are areas in this country, city, that, by the way, they even don't know the name of, I'm not saying I'm using the name, metaphorically or symbolically.
Must they know names to understand what is good for them?
They even don't know anything, by the way. They don't know anything about anything.
You see that statement you just made?
Well,
Yes.
Unfortunately, we have to bring this conversation to an end, because here, there's a lot. There's still a lot to unpack. There's still a lot to debunk, but good for us to start to do that, at the very least in our minds. Riziki Dunstan is a lawyer and vice chairman of the National Reconstruction Alliance Party. He's been our guest this hour. Thank you so much for being in the Situation Room this morning. Asante sana.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.